Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
5:06 on this Wednesday morning. Thanks for tuning into Jonah Goldberg's favorite morning show here in Washington, D.C. We had a little bit of an echo going on there.
Jonah?
It's O'Connor and Company. He just plugged in, yes. I say that about Jonah Goldberg because I know that he's the narcissistic type of person who has a search on his name everywhere. So whenever he's mentioned in the media. So good morning, Jonah. You're maybe getting this a couple of hours later because Lord knows you don't wake up with our friends in the military who are with us right now. That's Julie Gunlock. I'm Larry O'Connor. I'm a little wired right now because last night, here's the thing, on days like this when people think, oh, you have to stay up and watch the convention and then you got to wake up so early, you must be exhausted. And it's actually the opposite. When you're like up late and you're plugged into events and you're watching all those things, it's hard to get to sleep. You know what I mean?
I'm exhausted, but okay.
I am fired up as we saw a unified Republican Party last night. And meanwhile, in the dark corridors of the Democratic Party, they're all figuring out a way how to get rid of their guy. And they're all vying for the nomination that could very well be up for grabs in August. You talk about two parties that are facing very different futures with their leader right now. The Republicans have put on quite a show so far in Milwaukee. Coming up at 6:35, Cal Thomas will join us at 7:05. Mark Paoletta talk about Biden trying to blow up the Supreme Court, but because, boy, they really don't like Clarence Thomas. Have you noticed that?
I've noticed.
Kind of a thing. They're willing to shred the Constitution to protect it. 7:35, Hung Kao absolutely knocked it out of the park last night with his remarks at the convention. He'll join us. 8:05, Mercedes Schlapp. And then at 8:35, Richard Anderson, chairman of the Virginia Republican Party. He must be very proud right now of Hung as well. Thanks for joining us this morning. Julie, where to begin? No, seriously, where are we beginning? How about Joe and Mika?
Yeah.
That was we mentioned it a little bit yesterday that they were back on the air. And, the initial reports when Joe and Mika were ripped from the airwaves on Monday was that they had participated. They were in on the conversation, and they agreed with corporate about the decision to take them off the air the day after the assassination, which is fascinating to me because, again, it's an admission. It's an admission that they're part of the problem, that calling the president Hitler for a decade, saying that he was a tool of a foreign hostile government out of Moscow, and saying that if he wins the election this November, it will be the end of our country and the last free election we ever have. That sort of adds up and suggests that maybe that was part of the problem that led a man to try to put a bullet into his head. So the initial reports were that Joe and Mika were all part of the decision, and they wanted to make sure that everyone knew that this was not against their will. Well, Joe took to the airwaves yesterday and sort of embellished on that narrative.
We were told in no uncertain terms on Sunday evening that there was going to be one news feed across all NBC News channels yesterday. The Today Show would be Lester Holt, other people that you worked with on Sunday. And that was going to be one news feed across all NBC News channels, that we were going to stay as a network in breaking news mode throughout all day yesterday. That did not happen. So, Julie, their participation in the decision to come off the air was under apparently false pretenses.
It was based on a lie.
Yeah, the network said, guys, we're not doing any commentary shows, no panel shows. We're just going to do straight news. We're still covering the assassination.
And then they were the only show that was taken off the air.
Imagine what they thought when they saw Joy Reid in prime
exactly,
time.
because you can imagine that they're like, wait a minute, us? Wait, we're the problem?
She's the only one who gets to call him Hitler? Come on.
Yeah,
I could have done that 12 hours
exactly.
ago.
Yeah, it was very clear.
And by the way, this does happen in the media sometimes. I've been on the air before, not on this station, but I've been on other stations. When a big news event happens and the program director, for some reason at the radio station, we're going live to the network news coverage. And I understand because they have more resources and they have report. But the fact of the matter is they very rarely do have anything more than what we have here in the studio. Here's what happens. We're going to go to a straight news coverage where they'll spend hours speculating about things.
Also, I will say there is comfort. And I've had people say, it was so nice that you were on, like
Right.
on holidays, right?
Right. On a day like that, I want to hear the people
wanna
that
hear
I know.
that
and
I consider sort of in
Right.
my family, my friends. These are my. I mean, we have listeners. Whether it's a wine event or
Right.
the free speech forum. I mean, you really feel a camaraderie,
Especially
with
in
these
a
people.
morning show like Morning Joe. You start your day,
that way.
with them. That
Yeah.
it becomes part of your
and
routine.
you want to go to those people to hear this really important news. So
Right.
the idea that they were taken off, I mean, boy.
Well, Joe was not pleased.
We don't know why that didn't happen, or team was not given a good answer as to why that didn't happen, but it didn't happen. We were also told it was going to happen throughout the day. And I guess after there was such a strong blowback about yesterday morning, I guess they changed their plans. And so those plans changed as well.
I guess they changed their plans. You tell yourself that, Joe.
Yeah. He went on.
We've talked about it off the air. We'll talk about it on the air because we talk about everything on the air.
Sure we do.
We were very surprised. We were very disappointed. And if we had known that there wasn't going to be the one news feed from NBC News across all NBC News channels, Willie, we obviously would have been in yesterday morning.
Would you have been? I don't think so. I think that you were taken off for a very good reason. Willie is Willie Geist, and Willie Geist, of course, had to do his duty.
We want to be here for our audience, and we know you trust us, and we have ultimate respect for you guys. So we are here today. I wish we'd been here yesterday.
Yeah, we all wish we would have been here yesterday. We still would like to figure out exactly why there wasn't that one.
They're so pissed.
They're so mad, and they have to save face right now.
Yeah.
They're sort of grappling with this. I don't know why plans changed. I don't know. They've got to do this because it was embarrassing, and obviously the news coverage was wow. MSNBC pulls this one
That's
program.
Right. So Mika jumps in.
And I think the reason why is this show began and continues 17 years later on being the place where you can go to have the hard conversations in a civil way. And so it seemed like now more than ever is a time that we would like to be on. And
there is nothing hard about those conversations. It is one big group think.
Right. It's the
conversation.
they approach topics in the easiest possible way.
They all pat each other on the back. They all talk, in these incendiary ways.
They demean anybody
Yes.
who disagrees with them,
Yes.
and in a civil way. How many
Civil
clips do we have
way.
Joe Scarborough ranting, screaming at his audience and telling his audience, "You don't like what you hear? Go F yourself." I mean, it's
There
like
is- yes.
he's the caricature of crazy talk radio, which doesn't actually exist.
There is nothing left of the old Joe Scarborough,
Yeah.
the old Republican.
Yeah,
There's nothing left.
The whole thing that's how this show started. Can I tell you how the show started? Don Imus had a simulcast, Imus in the morning. They simulcast his morning radio show on WABC in New York. Actually, he was on WFAN at the time, excuse me. And they simulcasted and put cameras in his studios, and that was the morning show on MSNBC. Then Don Imus, or actually one of the people on his team, the departed Bernie McGurk, and Don is also dead, rest in peace, all of you guys, radio giants. They said something racist and incendiary about the Rutgers basketball team. MSNBC
right.
pulled them off the air. They didn't know what to do the next morning. They said, let's just throw Joe Scarborough in there temporarily until we get something else. That's how that show started.
And from then on, Joe Scarborough has acted like a toddler, having a freak out, having a temper tantrum, and he was put in a timeout. And
no, I'm sorry. They've just been having hard conversations in a very civil way.
civilly.
Well, I'll let you know how they wrapped up this little morning rant, exposing in a humiliating way about how they were taken off the air, and they were the only ones on MSNBC taking off the air because they posed a threat to their network overlords, a threat that you don't want to float out there unless you're willing to deliver. We'll tell you what they threatened in a moment. First, though, it's 5:15. WMAL.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live.
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Oh, and let me just say, next time we're told there's going to be a news feed replacing us, we will be in our
We'll
chairs.
be sitting here.
Yeah, and the news feed will be us, or they can get somebody
still be
else
sitting here.
to host the show.
Wow. That's a threat. So we won't trust them next time they tell us it's going to be straight news. We'll be here, and if they don't want us, they should get somebody else to host the show.
Yeah, are there bosses at MSNBC? Is anyone in charge at MSNBC?
Oh, sure.
Look at what Joy Reid does on
Yeah.
a nightly basis. Absolute insanity.
Yeah.
Absolute insanity.
But Joy Reid has the benefit of
I
being
get
a
it.
black liberal woman, and so therefore they're stuck with her. They can't get rid of her.
George Floyd years, like I get it, but that is waning, and I think
Maybe.
there should be changes afoot. MSNBC, it's so funny when you think that CNN, which is crazy town,
Yeah.
and they are relatively normal compared to MSNBC.
Yeah, but MSNBC does get ratings.
I know,
Yeah. I mean, not ratings like, conservative cable
Sure.
news, but they do get some ratings, and they do make money. But you ask if there's anyone in charge at MSNBC, the answer is yes. And that person right now is looking at a spreadsheet, I guarantee you, after a threat like that. I learned very early on, not in my radio career, but my career before that, I got promoted at a very early age and had a huge job with big responsibility at the age of 24. And that only happened because the 62-year-old general manager of the theater that I was the assistant manager of tendered his resignation because he was in a dispute with corporate. And he said, all right, if that's your decision, then I quit. And the vice president of the company called me within 30 seconds and said, Ira just quit. And I said, wow, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, he quit. And I said, well, what are you going to do? He goes, well, I'm going to promote you. Because you do not make that threat. And he never, it was a threat. I've talked to the guy after the fact. He goes, I didn't want to quit. I was doing that as a tactic. I was negotiating. That's what Joe Scarborough just did. And that person at MSNBC, he is currently looking at a spreadsheet. And in one column, it's got how much they have to pay Joe and Mika to do their little show from their garage studio in Jupiter, Florida.
That's problematic and causing the network trouble.
That's right. And then on the other side, they're looking at the income.
Well,
and they're weighing the two, and they're saying, is it really worth it?
Well, the good news is that they have recently downsized from a really big house to a townhouse. So maybe they were preparing for this all
Maybe
along.
they know there's going to be a cash flow crunch coming soon. Oh, it's a beautiful thing to behold. It couldn't have happened to a nicer couple of people. Honestly, the big takeaway in this whole story, who knew they've been on 17 years?
Oh, my God.
That's insane.
That is insane.
Yeah.
I remember when they started. My gosh.
You
are kidding. I am getting to that age where I'm like 17 years ago, I was still an adult.
That was nothing. Are you kidding? But that's right. In fact, wasn't their logo? Their logo was like a little coffee ring, Morning Joe, and I think Starbucks sponsored the show at the beginning.
Right.
They had a little Starbucks thing.
Cup.
Get it, Morning Joe.
Yes.
And it was Joe Scarborough, and it was just again a stopgap because they had just lost Don Imus.
He wasn't married to Mika then.
No, and Mika wasn't married to Joe,
Mm-mm.
but now they're married together. Because sometimes Me Too stories have a happy ending. It's 5:21.
Making sense of your world.
Thank you very much for covering this topic.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Well, here's a headline you don't see every day. A corrupt politician in New Jersey, a Democrat. Oh, no, that you hear every day. No, this is the part that you don't hear every day. Was convicted yesterday of corruption charges. Of course, we're talking about Senator Robert Menendez, Bob Menendez, a darling of the Democratic Party. I mean, they loved him so much they even made him chairman of the, was it Foreign Relations Committee?
It was Foreign Relations,
Yeah, and he used that chair to
influence.
Get gold bars from
That's
Egypt,
right. That's
apparently.
Right. Yeah.
There were questions about Bob Menendez for years. When Obama was president and Eric Holder was attorney general, they protected him.
Mm-hmm.
And they, as I just said, elevated him to the level of chairman. They don't need to do that, but Chuck Schumer said, hey, dog, you're fine with me. There's no issue there. And now even the corrupt Biden Justice Department has found that Bob Menendez belongs behind bars. One does wonder what crossed the line here, though. He has been convicted on all those charges. Here's the amazing thing, though. There's no rule that says that he has to step down. I mean, he can stay a senator.
This whole case has such Goodfella vibes to it. You know, that scene where Lorraine Bracco is stuffing dollars down her underwear. Like, they found gold bars in places you don't want to think about.
Yeah. It's one thing that, stuffing $100 bills somewhere, but gold bars, that's going to leave a mark.
Hurts. Yeah, I imagine.
Anyway, Schumer has called for Menendez to resign. If only Chuck Schumer had any power there in the Senate. We'll see what happens. But he is... This happens at a time when the Republican Party obviously is showing unity and showing, the whole convicted felon thing clearly didn't work against Trump. And now, well, they've got their own convicted
there you
felon.
go.
Set of convicted felons, actually. You hate to see it. It's 528.
Now
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:36. It's O'Connor and Company on this Wednesday, 17th day of July, as we bid a fond farewell to Bob Menendez's freedom. Actually, he'll be sentenced a little later in the year. Actually, why did the sentencing end up being so much later than the actual conviction? We'll see what happens with Bob Menendez. But one thing is for certain, he is still a member in good standing for the Democratic Party. I wonder if he's going to get a speaking slot at the convention, Bob Menendez. Why not? I mean, this is the soft on crime party. In fact, he shouldn't even show any jail time. He should be let out.
Absolutely.
As we saw last night. I forgot to tell you who we got coming. 6:35 Cal Thomas, 7:05 Mark Paoletta on Biden's plans to blow up the Supreme Court, figuratively, I think. 7:35 Hung Kao, fresh off his monumental speech last night. 8:05 Mercedes Schlapp, and 8:35 Richard Anderson, Republican Party chairman of the Commonwealth of Virginia. All right, Julie Gunlock. J.D. Vance is having his coming out, as it were. He's had a lot of media appearances, a lot of things said about him. Tonight he'll be able to speak for himself, as he will be officially nominated, and then he will give his acceptance speech. He'll be introduced by the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., so there's going to be a lot of beards on the stage, which we need to address quickly. Yes, I know you come here for deep thought political analysis about conservative principles and elections and such, but we're also incredibly superficial here on O'Connor and Company. I lead the way. Are you okay with a bearded vice president or even president? We haven't had a bearded president since like Millard Fillmore or something. Are you all right with that?
I'm fine with it. I think J.D. Vance looks really good with a beard.
He looks better than without the beard.
My husband does this thing where every year he has a beard and then he shaves it off and looks, 24. And I feel like I'm like a cougar.
He does have a baby face, J.D. Vance
my
does.
husband's the same way.
Yeah.
He looks very young without a beard, and then he grows a beard. He looks scruffy and older. And I always joke that my husband and I are going to be, George and Barbara Bush, where I get sort of shorter and wider, and he gets taller and more dignified looking. And so I like my husband with a bit of scruff. And I think J.D. Vance looks great. He can carry it well. He does have a bit of the chipmunk cheek baby face.
He does.
Look.
When you look at the pictures of him clean shaven, especially that Marine Corps photo when he enlisted, which he was a baby. What was he, 19? I think when he enlisted. Yeah. But some people find a beard as
some people need to get a hobby. Honestly, between this and criticizing Harmeet Dillon for giving an invocation, I am so fed up with some of the people with these extreme positions on like things that don't matter. Right. Beards don't matter.
Beards don't matter. Tell Tim Scott that.
Okay.
What? Right. Okay. So anyway, next thing.
Oh gosh, Larry.
President Trump and J.D. Vance, once he does get officially nominated as his running mate, are already set to campaign in Grand Rapids, Michigan. What did I tell you all yesterday? You put J.D. Vance between now and Election Day. J.D. Vance spends his entire time in central or western Pennsylvania, suburban Detroit, which is Grand Rapids, and southern Wisconsin. That's all. And all he does is talk about what he knows about the economy and the people left behind by the government and by corporations.
Story. Just tell your story.
Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin. That's what this play is, and that's what it's all about. And they've already set their first rally together. It will be this Saturday evening. Also noteworthy, this will be the first rally since the assassination attempt on President Trump in Pennsylvania. It'll be exactly 1 week after that bullet grazed his face. So it'll be a pretty amazing moment there to see the two of them on stage at their first rally, Trump, Vance together.
It is worth also saying, the decision to become the vice president. I've thought a lot about J.D. Vance's wife, and with the realization that, you're at heightened risk. My husband is at heightened risk. And, we really need to pray for J.D. Vance, his family, for the president, because These are scary times,
Yeah.
particularly. I mean, it's just Saturday that happened.
I know. And we should definitely pray. Always. You're right. We should also demand professionalism and proper execution of security details from the Secret Service. That doesn't seem like too much to demand.
Yeah, well, with Mrs.
Along
Cheeto
with
in
our
charge,
prayers.
we're not going to get that. But
Yeah, we'll get to the latest on the Secret Service later in the program. More J.D. Vance news. His book, Hillbilly Elegy, of course, is sort of his entree into the American culture and conscience. And the film adaptation of it that was produced for Netflix and was an award-winning film starring Glenn Close, it immediately shot up the ranks of viewership, up 1,000% on Netflix, and it is the #1 movie on Amazon.
can I tell you how happy I am to know that Hollywood, I mean, Amy Adams, Glenn Close, this was a major Hollywood production, okay? Yeah. Hollywood put together this incredibly emotional, thoughtful movie about J.D. Vance's life. And now they're like, what have we done?
Oh, forget that. It was directed by Ron Howard.
Right. What? I mean, they're like, we literally gave a 2-hour campaign ad to J.D. Vance because it's a wonderful, it's a
book about his life
Yes.
growing up in a working class Appalachian family, and it's been critically acclaimed and popularly acclaimed as well. And if you haven't seen it, you should. In fact, I have a person in my life, a young man who he had seen Hillbilly Elegy and didn't realize, and this is a guy who's pretty politically plugged in, but he never connected the dots. He knew J.D. Vance as this guy who appeared on Tucker Carlson and then just ran for Senate. And then when the news came out this weekend and he came to me, he's like, he's the guy, he wrote Hillbilly Elegy? That movie's amazing. I felt like I was watching my childhood in that movie.
Yeah.
Well, he comes from rural
my
middle America.
husband is from Ohio, and his parents were raised in deep South Ohio, which is sort of Appalachia. And my husband too had the same reaction to it. It is
I know these people.
I know these people.
Well, you knew that there was going to be dirt dug up about J.D. Vance. It was inevitable. And the Washington Post, you can count on them. They were Johnny on the spot. They've dug up some pretty damaging information about the man who will be Trump's running mate. And we're going to, sadly, we got to confront this stuff, Julie. It's real dirt. It's very damaging to J.D. Vance, and we need to confront it head on. And we will do that next. Stay with us. It's 5:44.
No.
All right, guys. I'm sorry. We have to, we got to tell it like it is. We got to deliver news. And the fact is the Washington Post has dug up some really, really damaging dirt. Could be career-ending. In fact, they might have to change their decision on whether J.D. Vance can be Trump's running mate. Here it is. Let's just confront it head on. Julie, I hope you can help me with this. Here's the truth, the reality, the ugly, ugly truth about J.D. Vance. He lives in Alexandria. That's it. That's the dirt. They're criticizing him for living in Alexandria when he came to D.C. to be a senator, and specifically going to the Del Rey neighborhood because apparently
it's a sort of that's
a pretty elite liberal neighborhood.
It's the sort of where the socialist enclave within. It is the deepest, darkest blue, I say, on the paint wheel. It's the one right next to black.
And J.D. Vance dared to choose to live
the nerve to live among us, good people. This is,
Republicans are supposed to live 3 hours away in some backwater country
As you know, I live in
town.
Alexandria proper. I live in a neighborhood right above Del Rey, okay? Del Rey is really ground zero for the worst kinds of liberals who are so judgy. And what's so interesting, I want to make everyone aware, Del Rey is the neighborhood where 24 Republicans were nearly murdered by a Democrat.
By a Rachel Maddow television addict. Yeah,
Bernie
Sanders bro. Yeah.
And Del Rey is also the location where a prominent real estate agent in Del Rey created these signs, these yard signs that just say, all it says is kindness. And she created them after Trump was elected.
Of course.
Right? And it's this sort of idea that I'm going to put this in my yard and I believe in kindness. And it is literally the neighborhood where the meanest, most closed-minded people live. And if you are, any way right of Bernie Sanders, You're a terrible person and you have no business here. When J.D. Vance moved into that neighborhood, his neighbors, a group of neighbors, crocheted trans flags.
I remember this. We talked about it,
Yes.
and they put it on like a telephone pole in front of his house.
They put a bunch of them all around where
trees.
so when they moved in, when that family moved in, they were welcomed with trans flags all over the neighborhood and around his house, specifically on flagpoles or on power poles right in front of his house. This is how they welcome J.D. Vance and his family.
The headline of the Washington Post article is LGBTQ flags and quinoa, the liberal Virginia enclave where J.D. Vance lives.
Now, I mean, there is a part of me that was like, oh my gosh, did someone warn him about this neighborhood? Because, again, I
know conservatives who live in that neighborhood, though, too. I mean,
it's a fine neighborhood. It's a very nice neighborhood. There's some on the main street there, great restaurants. Sort of Dairy Godmother is this famous ice cream shop. There's a lot of great things about Delray, but the people and there is sort of city leadership that lives there. The mayor lives there. They're not welcoming of anyone who's politically different.
Horrible people. They're horrible people, but we're used to that. But the message here is that if you're a conservative and a Republican and you come to D.C., you're not welcome in our... So where exactly are you supposed to live?
Loudoun County.
Yeah. But even they're trying to change Loudoun County, too. There's...
Don't forget Chardonnay
Sure,
Antifa.
Loudoun County, but don't put your kids in the public schools.
Right. Exactly.
And so then I guess you can go down south. Maybe Fredericksburg. Maybe, there's a...
Spotsylvania.
Here's the point. The whole point of it is that we're not welcome anywhere in these neighborhoods, but we have every right to be here, too. And in fact, if you don't like it, maybe you should move.
But again, you just have to understand the audacity of going through these neighborhoods and seeing kindness and hate has no home here. And everyone is welcome. And that in this home, we believe in blah, 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 blah. But we do not think if you are, again, right of Bernie Sanders, have any business buying a home in this community. You're not welcome.
I bet Liz Cheney's welcome. I bet Liz is welcome.
Alyssa Farrar, Jonah Goldberg. Yeah, they're welcome.
So there's two theses, if I may, to draw from what they're trying to do here with this article and the way people are promoting it. In fact, it's an old article, right? This is from a year ago, I think, when J.D. Vance moved here. But they're now...
This was updated. And okay.
Yeah, they're adding to it. Okay. But it's now being promoted, saying, hey, look... What they're trying to suggest here is that J.D. Vance is a closet liberal and that Trump's been fooled and he just plays this MAGA Republican
I don't think
kind
that.
of
I
thing.
think what they're trying to suggest here is this jerk, he doesn't understand. You stay in your corner. You stay with your people. This is a protected community for liberals, thoughtful people. We care about immigrants and poor people and blah, blah, blah.
That's the other thesis, is that in fact it's
belong.
far from belonging there. If anything, they've been protesting from the moment the documents for the home were signed.
Don't forget, Alexandria is also the town where city council members marched with Antifa to protest Chad Wolf for working at DHS.
We are very well aware of who Alexandria is, and certainly this neighborhood, and you're right. And here's the bottom line. All those people who protested and hung the flags and wanted him out of their neighborhood, looks like they're going to get their wish.
Well, yeah.
He's going to be moving to Embassy Row, and he'll be living at the Naval Observatory.
Yes.
5:53.